Uh, Hello, everybody. This is Jyoti Rahman, and I've got Ehtesham. Welcome to the first episode of Counterpoint's Cultural Bourgeois. What is that? Ehtesham, what is that? What are we
That's a
talking
great
about?
question, Jyoti Bhai. Thank you for queuing me up. You and I are avid consumers of pop culture. When we're not talking about our mutual friends and what's going on in the world, we're talking about the books, movies, and other types of pop culture that we consume. And that, to a large extent, I think, informs our worldview. So we thought that it was a great idea to have a show where we could, just openly hash those ideas out that we've spent so many months and, years discussing in groups and threads and emails and have a live show and discuss it. The bourgeoisie part, I think, talks generally about our worldview. We are, I would say, both unabashedly very mainstream, middle of the road, liberal people who are humanists and believe in inclusion. So, in a word, I think, even though it may be a little derogatory, we are bourgeoisie and very comfortable with it.
True. We are bourgeoisie and we're very comfortable with it, not just in terms of political ideology, but also in our, in our very uh, lives and lifestyles and so on. We are both suburban dads. I live in Canberra, Australia, and Ehtesham, you live in the outskirts of Washington, D.C. in Virginia.
Right.
Virginia, right, in the U.S. So, and we are both middle-aged dads. I have a teenage son, and you have two teenage daughters, right? So, our
One
children are
teen, one preteen.
one teen, one preteen. They're probably not going to be watching this because cringe dads, but dear viewers, you are obviously watching this, so rock on. So. Uh, and we have been reading and watching these shows that we would be talking about since the 80s and 90s. So we both grew up in Bangladesh in a more peaceful time, more innocent times before before we left for studies and other reasons. Um, but obviously, we have kept our connections, and we have talked for many years that should a certain event happens, which thankfully it did in the long July of 2024, that once that did happen, we would find ourselves, we would give ourselves a time to do a show like this. And here we are. So congratulations, Ehtesham. We're finally doing this.
Absolutely. And before we jump in, let me give a shout out to us and all the 90s kids out there. We often discuss what a wonderful time 90s was for Bangladesh, the onset of one whole decade of democracy, economic liberalization, economic growth, and, cultural flourishing. But also looking back, it was a more wholesome and innocent time for the world as a whole. Between the fall of the Berlin Wall and the ugliness of the war on terror, it was really a decade where it seemed like we could be approaching the end of history. So I think for both of us, that decade does inform how we will look at these works of art.
And we will be talking today. We are going to be talking about a Bangla movie and a novel, but in general, it will be about um, not just Bangla stuff from either side of the border, but also uh, uh, English works of arts from either side of the pond, as they say, or actually from anywhere in the world, as well as any time period. And indeed, it could be also Bollywood or anywhere. It could be movies, it could be TV shows, it could be novels. We don't know. And also, if you the watch viewers, if you have particular favorites that you want us to talk about, please do suggest. Okay, with all of that introduction done out of the way, what are we going to talk about today, Hitesham?
Our entry point into the vast canon of Satyajit Ray will be Shonar Kella, the book and the movie. Surprisingly, when I went back and looked at it, out of the vast canon of Feluda, probably Satyajit Ray's most maybe literary successful character, probably one of the most well-known literary characters across all of Bangladeshi or Bengali literature. Really the archetype of a private detective in Bengali literature. Even though there was Bomkesh before him, um, after him there was Misir Ali, but really Feluda, has his own place in the pantheon of literary icons. And we will be exploring Ray and his work through Shonar Kella, the book and the movie.
Hmm. And we're talking about Ray for two reasons. One will become apparent. One reason, or the reason will become apparent a bit later in the show. But the other one is because we wanted to do this recording probably slightly earlier in May when it was his birthday.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, okay, so Shonar Kella, uh, on a personal note, when did you first read or watch it?
Shonar Kella was probably one of the earliest Ray books that I read. I don't know why. I I mean because I started reading them in the early 90s, and by that time, he was on his deathbed. He's gotten the Lifetime Academy Awards, and then he passed away. I remember like Bangladeshi media had like wall to wall coverage about his passage. I used to, or we used to get like magazines from Calcutta in our home. I forget the name. Desh. We used to get Desh, and there used to be one more. And of course, that those had very like moving tributes about him. So by the time I got to his work, it was all there. Like I can close my eyes and visualize, the scene is Book Bichitra or one of the Gankosh or those other really favorite book spots in Bangladesh where you'd show up on like a Friday afternoon and you'd just see the lines of works by Ray, and it would be so exciting as you'd work through it. So maybe the shopkeeps arranged it by publication. That's my theory, because I do remember one of the first ones I read was Bachahi Auntie, which was the second Feluda mystery, and then
So
we got to
Balshai
the.
Anki was the first book,
It was the first book, correct?
but it was probably it was the third story, but the first book. The previous two were short stories, I think.
As far as Wikipedia, which took a quick look at right before this, I think first we have Feludar Gwendagiri,
That's
which was
right.
published just in Shondesh, and then
Yeah.
Batsrahiyanti.
Yeah. I think there was a another story that came out in one of those short story collections.
Hmm.
The that dozen Ek dozen Goppo,
Yes, yes.
those series,
Yes.
and one of those stories was written before Badshahi Aunty,
Hmm.
and then it came out in that collection. But Batshahi Angti was the first proper book.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So Shonar Kella has an interesting place in this canon for a couple of reasons.
Hmm.
One is it involves danger to a child, which
Hmm.
Satyajit Ray, would usually stay away from. Um, his detective stories would involve murders or, people in danger, people being attacked by Royal Bengal tigers, a lot of perils, but it would all be like fully grown adults. So unusually for this story, the person in peril is a precocious 7-year-old, whom we'll talk about a little bit later. But that like immediately raises the stakes, and I think that's one of the reasons when I read it, I felt a little uneasy, and like my teenage brain didn't have the tools to understand why I didn't like the story as much. But I think going back, I can tell that I just wasn't comfortable with a little boy being in peril. The second happier reason why this is a great book is this is where the three musketeers, the famous troika, come together and gel. Feluda, Topshe, and Jotayu, Lalmohan Babu. And, they become such a hit, such a success, such an iconic presence that we can't think about these stories without the presence of the three of them together.
Yeah. The I so the interesting thing about Feluda books, one interesting thing about Feluda books is that they obviously were uh, they were built as teenage stories or young people's stories, right? Young, um, not necessarily children, but what now we would call young persons or young adult fiction, right? And like it would come out in Anandamela or Sandesh or like those kind of Indian magazines that were aimed for that kind of teen audience, right? Um, but unlike most other such fictions of that time, or probably even now, these they had a lot of fairly grown up concerns. That so, for example, they they a lot of those a lot of adventures, because they are also adventures, right? um, Involve historical stuff about smuggling of
Right.
subcontinental arts, Indian arts and artifacts
Hmm.
to West, right? Um, and like this is, I mean, this is adventure. This is great, but if you are a preteen reading this, if you're a 12-year-old or 14-year-old reading this, you what do you care about Koilash or temple art being? I mean, sort of. There are baddies and there are goodies, and Feluda is a goodie fighting the baddie, right? That's the angle, right? Except that this is actually a fairly important issue, right? Um, and also that how the historical characters are portrayed. Again, when you are reading it as 12 or 14 and you are reading about Rajputs and Mughals, um, you know, y- all that stuff goes over your head. But then when you go back and read them again in light of how Indian history and subcontinental history has played out, and you see that and you say, interesting. That's how Ray was writing about it then, and that's not how modern India portrays these things. That's interesting. Um,
Absolutely.
Jotokanto Kathmandute, which came much later,
Hmm.
is about drugs and hippie trail and and what you call the um, you know uh, uh, pharmaceuticals and stuff like that, right? And that stuff is, again, very grown up themed things. So obviously, he was writing for pre-teen or young teen audience. So he was not getting into things like extramarital sex or uh, rape or sort of those kind of stuff, right?
Right.
So there were adult topics that he was not writing about, but he wasn't writing about simple kiddie stuff either. There were grown up themes throughout, and this was, yeah, definitely
Yeah.
one side that a child is in danger, and there are and that is obviously not
Right.
not simple
It
by any means.
wasn't Hardy Boys set in India.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And there were fictions like Hardy Boy set in India, right?
Right.
Um, which probably were also fun, but this it was not. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, that's a really good point. And then another thing I think just reading this book and then, going back and looking at the patterns is that what Lalmohan Ganguly, Jatayu brings to the mix, like Feluda is the detective. We can't be in his head directly because then there would be no mystery. So we have Topshe, the archetypical Watson, Hastings. Topshe is the narrator, young, little bit naive, hero worshipping his older cousin, and sort of the straight man to Feluda's quips and snide remarks and put downs through which our elder relatives would show their affection. And then Jotayu brings, you know, he's like the ultimate like foil for the comedic jokes and the over enthusiastic embrace of culture and his attempt to say Hindi at inopportune times, which I now wonder whether that was Satyajit Ray's dig at the enroachment of Hindi in Bengali culture. But interestingly, he also provides a little bit of financial stability to the trio because he's an established author. He is probably the type of literary figure whom Ray maybe in his head looked down upon, but also was fascinated with because he's a very commercially successful literary type. His books are full of errors and factual inconsistencies, but they sell out. And, they have titles like Shaharai Shihoron and Hondrase Hahakar. But, like Topshe has read them all, and he is financially stable enough to have a nice motor car with which they can always go on drives and take vacations. And in fact, if you look through the Feluda stories, Satyajit Ray was one of the most successful artists of his time in India, right? I mean, he was making movies in India. There were never any lack of producers who would finance his movies. Um, he got the Lifetime Academy Award. He got the French Legion of Honor. He was like feted and recognized everywhere, like Akira Kurosawa and Fellini and Christopher Nolan. They all cite his work. But if you read Feluda's stories, Feluda is obsessed with finances. He is always talking about his fees and reimbursements and the trips and travel and how many days he'll bill his client for. So, I mean, when you grow up and reread these, it really makes you wonder, what was Shotajit Rai's relationship with money. But this is an aspect that Jotayu helps with. he is like the well-meaning rich friend who can, paper over some of the expenses without making it awkward.
So this is actually quite interesting as well, because if you look at so there are two kinds of Satyajit Ray movies. There are the rural, well, there are actually three kinds. There are the Tagore adaptations, which are the 19th century adaptations, the historical ones. And then there are the rural poverty movies. And then there are the urban Kolkata. So there's the Calcutta trilogy, but there is also Mahanagar
Mm,
and those kind of movies. Nayok, most
right,
particularly, all right?
right.
And if you look at this last set of movies, that is very much squarely about what you are talking about in this particular thing.
Mm,
That uh, clearly Ray is not financially poor as such, but nor is he what we would call rich by any means. He
right.
is a man who has to count his pennies, right? And this comes through very much in these in this last set of what I call the his Calcutta movies,
Mm,
right? And that also probably shows, or that also probably reflects a city that is going through an immense historical transition, that it was moving from that uh, global cosmopolitan uh, capitalist entrepot
mm,
to a basically a provincial backwater. That's basically what happened to Calcutta in the second half of 20th century, right? Before or up until the Second World War, it was a global imperial entrepot, right? Um,
it was the
it was
second
the
city
second
of the
city in the
empire.
British Empire, right? Yeah, it was the second
Right,
city in the British Empire.
right.
It was a frontline city for the Allies during the war.
Hmm.
That's where it was in 1940s,
Right.
and and then by the time Ray was making these movies in the mid 70s, or by the time the 70s came along, it was reeling from insurgency. It was on the cusp of leftist takeover. It was in terminal economic decline. um, yeah, so sort of it's that transition was, or that decay was well set. And and this is, yeah, and this probably comes through very clearly in these urban Calcutta movies. And interesting is that this is not, it comes through not through any political speeches or economic speeches. None of these movies are political movies as such. These
Mm,
are all human dramas, or in case of Shonar Kella, very much an adventure story, right?
right.
But they come through in little snippets. Even in Shonar Kella, there is a line that Feluda actually says that it's not as simple as the case is interesting, or it's something, there are expenses, right?
Yeah.
That you have to
Yes.
yeah, that you have to, how much does the ticket cost, and you have to go to the laundry because it's cold in that part of
Yeah.
Rajasthan,
Exactly.
dry cleaning and so on. And then Topshe says that, well, you say that money is not everything, and then Feluda says, of course not, and especially when a little kid's life is in danger,
Right.
which, so again, there is that, yeah, that like, sort of, yes, money is not everything, but I still need to also realize that I still have to pay bills. So
Right.
yeah, yeah,
And then Feluda, of course, is, in a shown as he's shown as an orphan, where and he lives with Topshe's parents, who are his
that's right.
uncle and aunt.
Mhm.
And in the later books and movies, they're almost entirely sidelined. They're invisible. The client shows up in the drawing room, talks to Feluda, and then Feluda is off. But that that is the underlying event that Feluda is a guest in someone else's home.
Hmm. Yeah, yes, that's right. That's right. And the later books, yeah, that's right. They're completely sidelined, and I guess there's an implied sense that people have grown older and so on. Um, uh, but the interesting thing here is also that the uh, the absence of any um, what I would say family background or family drama in any of that stuff, right?
Hmm.
Which is not necessarily neither criticism nor any particular. It's just that this is done um, quite deliberately in again, that this is not something that it's not that Ray is incapable of this,
No,
right? So
he's
for
absolutely
example,
not.
Chinnamastak Abhishap is
Yes.
a very it's a
Yep.
very poignant family drama, right? Where again a lot of adult themes come through.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like that frankly, when I read it as in my I think I was 12 or 14 or something, or maybe 15, and at that time I was like, okay, this
Right.
is really what in Bangla you would call panpanani, right?
Right. Like,
um,
why
you
are
know
we talking about these instead of the good stuff where
that's
he's,
right, yeah, like
tracking
get to the
down
tiger,
people?
right? I
Yeah,
mean,
the
there's a
tiger.
tiger.
Exactly.
Yeah, right, I mean,
The tiger tamer.
yeah, right,
Yeah, the
yeah.
circus. Yeah.
Circus, exactly, right? Like, sort of, yeah. But when you go back and reread it and think about it, and you think like,
Yeah.
well, like, this is really deep, right?
Fascinating.
So, yeah, yeah,
Absolutely. So, and then the other thing we have to say that Satyajit Ray just made two Feluda movies, and Shonar Kella is a really interesting comparison when you think that the other movie he made is Joy Baba Felunath, which is, like in many ways like the complete opposite, right? It's really big in scale. It's set in, remind me, where is it set in?
Kashi,
It's
Banaras,
set in Kashi. The 10 days of the
Durga Puja.
puja, Durga Puja, and they're gonna, float off the avatar, and the really memorable villain, and the
Magandal Megraj,
Pavanlal
yeah.
Megraj, played amazingly by Utpal Datta, and the knife throwing, and so it's really like two poles of the same experience. Shonar Kella is, like you're on a journey to save a very innocent child who himself is not even like really present. He's like engrossed in his, what we are told are his past memories. So there's like a double remove. While you get to Mohanlal Megraj in Joyba Felunath, and it's like really he's like Kingpin before I ever read about Kingpin.
Yes, yeah, right. Manganlal Megraj is kind of like he is very much like a Bollywood villain. He's very much like a Pablo Escobar kind of figure, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's your Gabbar Singh. He's your he's your uh, kingpin. He's your lord, drug lord. He
Mhm.
is literally a drug lord in when he returns in Jotokhando Kathmandute.
Mm, exactly.
Yeah.
Even in Joy Baba Felunath, aren't they using? Oh no, it's the statue. He's trying to steal a statue of Ganesh.
Yes, he's trying to
Right,
steal a statue of Ganesh. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas in Jotokando Kathmandute, he is using those Tibetan prayer wheels,
Yes,
and using those prayer wheels, they're smuggling drugs into India. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Let's take a small detour here. What's your favorite Satyajit Ray Feluda book?
That's a very good question. In terms of adventure, I would probably actually put Jotokhando Kathmandute. That's
Mhm.
a very, particularly because I read it when I was very young and was like, oh wow, this stuff is really cool. So, so in terms of adventure, I would probably put that as one of the right up there.
Mhm.
In terms of mystery, as in I did not see that coming, as
Right.
in like how that actually unwinds. That probably would be Joy Baba Feluda,
Mm.
as in sort of that it was the. I guess we can do spoiler alerts here, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, like look, yeah. So in terms of spoiler alert, yeah, like in terms of that probably would be Joy Baba Feluda. Um, and then in terms of actual themes and underlying issues, that yeah, probably Chinnamaster Abhishap, because that
Mm.
has a lot of things that yeah, like family tensions and stuff that
Yes.
uh, that or and regrets and repentance
Mhm.
and so on, but also jealousy and all sorts of things that get uncovered. Um, that yeah, sort of those probably would be my three. How about yours?
I am always a sucker for, good riddles, and Chinnamostra Ovishab did have those great
And they have those
riddles.
riddles,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah,
The patriarch goes around saying, "Ami ki khutsi, ami ki pachi na," and
yeah,
then the way it's explained. So, and the whole, as you said, the regrets, the extended family, the weight of expectations, and how different children react to that. That was really good. I really liked the one set in Sundarban, the Royal Bengal.
it's not in Sundarban actually. So Royal Bengal Rahasya is
Royal
actually
Bengal,
set
right?
in North Bengal.
North
It's
Bengal.
yeah, it's about Royal Bengal, as in it's about tiger.
Jalpaiguri, maybe?
Dwarves. Yeah,
Dwarves.
close enough. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And, like the two brothers and how
That's
they,
right. That also
yeah,
has a riddle. It's
yeah.
a
It's a great riddle.
Noabed Thon, as in
Yeah.
um, treasure.
Yep.
Treasure of the Nawabs
Yeah. And the climax when they're all
and the tiger
there, yeah,
and the
and
tiger
the
Feluda.
tiger, oh my God.
Yes. Yeah, and that also has adult themes in the sense that yeah, expectations and also recognition. All right, that
Right.
money, yeah, like the sort of in terms of recognition versus what we call mullayon, right?
Right.
Recognition versus uh, reward in terms of money versus, as in like money reward versus recognition. Yeah, the
Yep.
Bangla word being mullayon, like properly recognize somebody with a honor and yeah,
Yeah.
those kind of things, right? So yeah,
And then my third would probably be Hottapuri. Just because when I read it, it almost felt like it verged into quasi horror, right? Like it's set on these desolate beaches, and you just see footprints going here and there, and I don't know, I got spooked out. Yeah.
yeah.
So, but
Yeah,
no, it's a great body of work, all in all.
great body of work. True. The it's also quite interesting. Quite uh, you know good introduction to Indian subcontinent
Right.
in terms of tourism. All right. Great travel introduction to India. Right.
Absolutely. I mean,
Length
especially
and breadth
for
of the yeah.
many of us who maybe won't have the opportunity to travel extensively in India, read
Politics
those
being what it
books.
is, that's probably
Exactly.
the case. That's probably going to be the case for the foreseeable future, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, those books are so evocative, and they really ground you, as if You are in Kailash, you are traveling in Puri, you are going to, Kanchenjunga, Darjeeling. It's all there.
I'm going to show, we're going to now take a slight detour, going to show a clip from the movie.
Mm.
And then after that, we're going to get into the next part of the show where Etesham, you had a particular observation about the movie versus the book, and which will segue into our, broader second part of the show, which we'll get to that. How does that sound?
Sounds great. Let's do it.
All right, okay.
মুকুল, তোমার একটা ছবি তুলি।
গুড মর্নিং।
ব্রেকফাস্ট হয়ে গেল?
হ্যাঁ, ভোরে উঠি তো, শরীর চর্চার বদভ্যাস আছে।
তাই আপনাকে এত ফিট লাগে।
আজ কি করছেন?
রেস্ট। আর মুকুলেরও তো একটু দরকার, আর আমিও একটু চুপচাপ একলা বসে ভাবতে পারলে ভালো হয়।
নতুন কোনো চিন্তা?
ভাবছিলাম কি জানেন, উট, বালি, কেল্লা, ময়ূর, এগুলোকে একসঙ্গে এক জায়গায় ভারতবর্ষের বাইরে কোথাও নেই বা ছিল না। পূর্বজন্ম যে এদেশেই হতে হবে এমন তো কোনো কথা নেই। এই কথাটা ঠিক একদিন আমার স্ট্রাইক করে, জানেন।
আমি ভাবছিলাম আজ কোনো এক সময় যদি মুকুলের সঙ্গে একটু কথা বলা যেত।
বেশ তো, আপনারা তো বেরোচ্ছেন, ফিরে আসুন, তারপর একসঙ্গে বসা যাবে।
একটা কথা কাল থেকেই মনে হচ্ছে, আপনি সব উদ্ভট জিনিস নিয়ে ডিসকাস করছেন কেন মশাই? হ্যাঁ, যে দেশে এমনিতেই কুসংস্কারের এত ছড়াছড়ি, সে দেশে এসব জন্মান্তর না কাটানোই ভালো নয় কি? শেষকালে দেখবেন ঘরে ঘরে সব কচি ছেলেরা না নিজেদের জাতিস্বর বলে কি করছে, তখন কটাকে নিয়ে সারা দেশ চষে বেড়াবেন।
মর্নিং।
ওটাকে ছাড়বেন না।
হ্যাঁ,
বেরোবো।
এতে?
হ্যাঁ।
ও বাবা, কোথায় যাইয়ে ভাই?
আমিও কাটছি মশাই, জয়পুর। কাটছেন? হ্যাঁ, এদিকটা বড্ড ড্রাই। রাস্তার দিকে নজর রাখিস।
কেন ফেলুদা?
লাল চাদর মোড়া খুঁড়িয়ে হাঁটা লোক দেখলেই আমাকে বলবি।
কি ব্যাপার, কি মরাই?
আমরাও আপনারই মতো রহস্যের খোঁজ করে বেড়াচ্ছি।
ও, রহস্য? আমার অনেক দিনের ইচ্ছে, বুঝলেন, যে একটা আসল গোয়েন্দার সঙ্গে একটা বেশ আসল রহস্যের মধ্যে জড়িয়ে পড়ি। সেটা বোধ আর হইল না। দেখুন দেখুন, কি সুন্দর পাথরের জিনিস সব সাজানো রয়েছে দোকানে। এরকম হলদে রঙের পাথরের জিনিস দেখেছেন কখনো? এই রক্ষে রক্ষে।
आपको विंडो में वो जो पीला वाला कटोरा है ना, पत्थर का, हाँ वो जरा दिखलाइए।
জিনিসটা এটাকে নিতেই হবে। দাম कितना?
इसका भाव 25 रुपए दाम।
ये कहाँ का बना हुआ है?
ये जैसलमेर का बना हुआ है, बहुत बढ़िया चीज है, ले लीजिए।
जैसलमेर, येलो लाइमस्टोन। लालमू, आसो।
So, fun fact, Santosh Rai, who plays Lalmohan so brilliantly, was actually a lawyer by profession.
Aha, there you go. Fun fact, did not know.
Yes. That tie.
The yeah, when he, when he first shows up in the show, in the movie, that is a, that is one of the probably, the best, um brilliantly shot comedy movie scene in Bangla movies
Hmm.
ever. The introduction of Jatayu,
Right.
to Feluda and Topshe.
No, absolutely.
So you had an observation about the movie versus the book.
Yes. So if you look at the Feluda canon, there are some short stories. There's Badshahi Aunty, which is set in Lucknow. In its way, also a great story. It's about the spy. There's a little riddle there, the Bulbulaya. And then almost the next like big outing novel is Shonar Kella. And it's interesting the tropes that Satyajit Ray reaches for here. He puts a child in danger, but he also plays with switched identity in that um, Feluda is sent to safeguard the boy because he is with a trusted adult and there is a nefarious character out to get the boy. And when Feluda shows up, that is what he sees apparently, that the boy is with this adult and there's this like figure in the periphery who's like hovering. But what the book readers don't find out until much later is that before Feluda gets there, due to the train schedule and the delays in Delhi, all of which are intricately detailed by Rai, the roles have reversed. So the bad guy is now in the apparent position of authority, has the passport and all the accoutrements of authority, and is walking around with the boy. And the good guy, was thrown off a mountain, has lost his passport, and is, very much in disguise in a typical Rajasthani dress and shadowing them. So, as the book reader, we, figure this out eventually. And when we do, it's like a really like amazing reveal. We're like, oh, this is why, and that's why there's this tension, and things are going in that way. So Satyajit Ray is a great auteur. He wrote the book, he made the movie, he directed it, he took the lead in casting. So he had like the type of creative control that the Russo brothers or Christopher Nolan or the other current directors would like kill for. And he makes this switch where he shows the switcheroo, the reversal where the bad guy replaces the good guy and takes on the accoutrements and the appearance of authority on screen in front of the in like it happens very linearly. So we can see as Feluda is on his way, this switcher is already happening. And that made me wonder whether, Ray, either generally or at this point in his life, held movie viewers in less regard than book readers, in that book readers would, stay with the story and appreciate the switch at the end, while for movie viewers it just had to be very linear, and you're being spoon fed the incident on top of the fort where the bad guy is pushing Dr. Hajare off the mountain, because he could have done it the same way as the book and made it a big reveal at the end. But I wonder why he chose to make it much more linear, which in my mind detracted from the charm of the story when you're watching the movie.
Yeah, so he actually explained, or he actually talked about this in in one of his interviews, which is probably available in YouTube. In fact, it is actually available in YouTube because that's where I watched it. But I'll see if we can find it, and I'll share that with you if I can find it. But it sort of goes something like this. Have you seen the movie Chiriyakhana?
No.
Or are you... So Chiriyakhana is a Bomkesh movie, a Bomkesh story, where Uttam Kumar plays Chiriyakhana, and Ray um, directed it. But it's one of those rare ones where Ray did not write the script. So he was brought in much later in the movie, and he ended up doing it. It was one of those financing deals, which was basically that, okay, you do this big budget Uttam Kumar um, movie, and we would produce your whatever else. And I don't remember the details about what the other thing was, but the other thing was a Ray, you know, project that Ray needed the money for. So Ray did the Chiriyakhana Bomkesh, and that was it was a big success. It won the national awards. Ray got his awards. Uttam Kumar. So Uttam Kumar got 2 national awards as best actor. Both were directed by Satyajit Ray. One was Nayok and one was Chiriyakhana.
I see.
Nayok was obviously Nayok is a classic. Maybe we'll do a show about Nayok one day. Chiriyakhana, Ray himself said it was one of his worst movies. Why? Because Ray says that it was a pure whodunit, and simple whodunits, according to Ray, where it works great in books, but movies apparently, and that gets to your point. So according to Ray, movies are a different thing. That moviegoers, they're basically like, you need to, a movie is something you need to show. Now the trick is how you show it. So on the one hand, it's a visual thing. Therefore, you need to show that the baddies are pushing the good guy off the cliff, and all of those things are happening because these are things that you can actually show in the movie. And so he did that. But at the same time, you also need to build the suspense, and you need to also, now the audience knows that this is the baddie, and the boy is actually in danger, and Feluda cannot actually save the kid, or there is this tension because Feluda doesn't realize that the boy is in danger, right?
Right.
And whether, so that the boy is in danger, but Feluda doesn't know it, and
Right.
and there is that tension, sort of. So is that, and that is something that the movie needs to do. And what I'm hearing from you is that I wonder if Ray was successful enough in doing so. I haven't watched the movie in a while, so I wondered if that was the case, right? Maybe not. Maybe so it's not so much that he revealed the thrilling bits, because the movie being a movie, he wanted to reveal the thrilling bits. It's more that they reveal failed to deliver the point of revelation, because the point of revelation was to make the danger more dangerous.
Absolutely. And then the two, the villains, he paints them in as villains as very broad strokes, like the actual Dr. Hajra is sort of dignified, he's wearing a nice suit, while the two imposters are, like almost cartoonish. Like you can imagine like a Bugs Bunny sign on top of them saying, these are the bad guys. Like they show up wearing like garish clothes. They have, weird facial hair. They're just they are very different from the good guys on this movie. The other thing I wonder is whether, for Ray, writing books was an easier exercise, right? I mean, he was prolific. His literary output was between Feluda, Professor Shonku, the books, the short stories for the Puja episode, the Puja uh, magazines. It was amazing.
Plus all
So,
the scripts. He wrote most of the scripts
and the
himself.
scripts.
Yeah.
But so for the books, maybe, he was just like, uh, it's a whodunit. I'll keep it very simple and clear, and then the readers will enjoy it. While for movies, he had to get outside financing, arrange the cast, get people together. It was a whole thing. So maybe he put too much weight on himself, that it can't just be a mystery reveal who done it, who's the criminal. It needs to show broader things. And by the time it's the late 70s and the 80s, he's one of the most famous directors in the world, and he's an Indian icon, and there's a lot of pressure on him to
Hmm.
deliver masterpieces consistently. So
Yeah.
maybe, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe that.
And taking Feluda by this time, by the mid 70s, Feluda itself himself, it's an iconic character
Right.
going on the big screen. Comparisons probably would have been made in color, right? So comparisons would be made with Bollywood, let alone um, Western movies, right? So Feluda is going to Rajasthan.
Yes.
You have to show something big. It cannot just simply be Feluda thinking and solving a problem and showing how clever he is, right? It has to be, so you have to have a fort and you have to show somebody being thrown off the cliff, and there has to be peacocks and all those other things. Maybe. But this also brings to a few other things about Ray that are interesting, that I have wondered, both about Feluda canon, um, but also about Ray as the character himself. So in terms of Feluda canon, the lack of female characters. We talked about Chinnamaster Abhishap. That is probably the only Feluda book that has complex,
Yes.
remotely complex. Probably one of the two um, um, Feluda stories that has a female character.
The
Really,
daughter-in-law, right?
the daughter-in-law.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
the younger daughter-in-law, the youngest daughter-in-law. Yes,
Correct.
and the granddaughter, obviously.
And the granddaughter. Yeah, she's great. Which one is the other story?
So there is another story where I forget the name, but here is the it's set in Kolkata,
Hmm.
and a guy challenges um, or bets with his niece that he can outsmart Feluda, and he tricks Feluda into saying that there is a mystery or something,
Hmm.
and Feluda almost gets beaten, and the niece sort of gives it, sort of there's some detail. So it's one of those. It's not a short story, but not is it? It's a novella.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of those lesser known ones. But yes, yeah.
Yes, you're right. Ray, especially for Feluda, also for Professor Shonku, which we should really talk about again, another fascinating canon of work, really operate in this hyper masculine world, which probably you could get away with in the subcontinent of the 80s and the 90s. But to us sitting in the present day and time is really a curiosity, especially given the fact that the person who's writing this is not some, country bumpkin or some close minded bigot. This is the iconic product of generations of Calcutta Renaissance Enlightenment, Brahmo Samaj, probably the finest end product. And in the most prominent canon of his literary work, women are really absent.
Absolutely, absolutely. The uh, that he's the that he was in tune with the times, the zeitgeist of his time is beyond doubt. He was a mid 20th century, second half of 20th century liberal person in a global sense is beyond doubt. I mean, if you look at his movies, his again, if you look at his broader movie canon, there are many, many very strong female characters, right?
Right, right.
Um, Mohanagar is about a housewife taking on a job outside, how basically taking a job because the family is facing financial difficulties,
Mhm.
and the family is not responding to that very well. Exactly the same issue is described in Humayun Ahmed's Aishab Din Ratri 25 years later, right? So Ray is describing something in the early 60s that um, Humayun Ahmed is describing in Dhaka a generation later, right?
Right.
Um, so sort of, so Ray is not, it's not that Ray is not aware of any of this, right? Um, Even earlier, I think in the mid 50s or late 50s, we have Kanchanjunga,
Mm.
right? Which is set in Darjeeling, and it's about upper middle class um, family visiting Darjeeling, and there is a girl, and the expectation is that she's going to meet this guy who's, I mean, like, it's a elaborate courtship, arranged marriage kind of situation,
Right.
and and she does not. So there are basically, so uh, there is a potential groom, and the family likes him because he's an upcoming executive in a foreign firm and all of those things. She doesn't really like him. There's nothing wrong with him. It's just that she doesn't like him. There is also another guy who is a potential job seeker
Mm.
who is trying to, meet the patriarch of the family for an interview in Calcutta a bit later. And the girl probably fancies him, but there's no way that match is going to work. And that guy's also not going to actually propose the girl because he doesn't have a job. I mean,
Right.
and there are other things going on as well, right? And again, like, sort of, it's it's the girl who speaks her mind at the end of the movie, right? Again, Ray is very clearly, he understands the dilemma of mid 50s women in situations like this. So it's not that, like, Ray is oblivious to the gender issues of his time, but somehow in his literary work, all of this is absent.
Mhm. Agreed. Let me add a little coda to that. I checked the wiki page for Calcutta right before we started, and right now I think Calcutta is 20% Muslim, and it's generally had a robust Muslim population throughout. But as far as I remember, none of Feluda's clients are ever Muslim, and there aren't really Muslim people, like in the books as characters, as victims, what have you. They're also somewhat written out of his Feluda books, at least.
There aren't. That's right. There aren't any prominent characters. There are side characters.
Gardeners and, like,
That's right.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. There are nawabs and so on in
sure.
the historical sense.
Yes.
Um, and like, yeah, like, in Badshahi Angti and all of those kind of things,
Sure. The
right?
long dead people
Long dead
safely
people,
relegated
and
to
that's right.
space.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, but in Ray's world, or in Feluda's world, there aren't Muslims. That is true. Yeah. Um, the other interesting question that comes is Ray's lack of interest with Bangladesh altogether.
Right.
Right. So I think he visited Bangladesh in 1972, straight after liberation for 21 February,
Hmm.
and that's pretty much it.
Interesting. Well, I imagine Bangladesh in 1972, 21st February was quite a grim place. So we probably didn't make the best impression on him.
So the thing is that other people who visited with him
Mm.
all went back and were all very, there was all that, the euphoria about 1971, uh, completely, overriding, or erasing, or negating 1947, and sort of Dui Bangla, and sort of Bonhomi and all of those things, and the errors of one being negated by the correction of the other, and etc. Whereas in Ray canon and Ray work, there is absolutely none of that. um, there is in Ray's movie work, Muslims do show up again, in the sense that not necessarily in direct characters, but there are strong references to Hindu Muslim issues in Khore Baide, which
Hmm.
is also iconic Tagore work, right?
Right.
In the sense that Khore Baide is, have you read or watched it?
I have not.
So
It,
that's
it
another thing that we should probably do at some point.
if it doesn't have a mystery or a riddle, why would I bother? But now that
But
you
it
mention
does
it,
have a mystery, actually. It has
ah,
Shomitru and it has Mohor, as in Nob, No, Khore Baide is set in, during the Swadeshi Andolan.
got it.
So, during the first partition of Bengal. And Shomitro is a Swadeshi Neta, Swadeshi leader, and he is organizing the movement in East Bengal. Okay, and his friend Victor Banerjee is the local jomidar, local
Mm.
landlord. Now, the Muslim merchants are against the boycott movement. Why? Because the boycott movement is extremely expensive. The uh, imported clothes from England are cheaper
Right.
and therefore more profitable. Okay, if you don't sell them and you sell the homemade Indian clothes, then you don't make profit. It's just not economically sensible to do this. It's
Mm.
fine for you to say from Kolkata that, uh, buy khadi and burn all these foreign clothes.
Right.
Okay, but if I'm the local merchant and I have imported these clothes, and you are asking me to burn them, burn my stock,
Mm.
then that basically means that you are burning my livelihood,
Got it.
right? So, and so Victor Banerjee, so the local Muslims come to Victor Banerjee and says that, you are our ma-bap. You are the zamindar. You are our ma-bap. We come to you for bichar.
Right.
You tell us what to do. What kind of বিচার is this that you are asking? আমাদের পেটে লাথি মারছেন. Okay,
Yep.
like, what it is to us about Deshbhag and Kolkata and Delhi and all of these things, right? That you are asking us to burn our living. and so Victor thinks about this very deeply. And while all of this is going on, Soumitra goes, and Soumitra and his Biplobis, they actually go and burn the warehouses. Okay, and there are other things going on. So there is an extramarital affair. There are mohor, all of Soumitra is not a good guy in this by any means. Okay, again, spoiler alert.
Okay.
Okay, but hey, look, this is a Tagore novel that is 100 years old. So
Right.
okay, and the Ray movie is also like at least 40 years old. And so, and then and then Victor Banerjee basically comes out and says that okay, he gives Soumitra an ultimatum that Soumitra has to live, that whatever Swadeshi is not going to happen under his watch in his village, because if this is what Swadeshi means, and if this is what loving your country means, then he does not want anything to do with it. So, and the actual, so I have not read it in Bangla. So my Bangla is not so good to read Tagore in original, but in the English version, which is also translated by Tagore himself, there's a passage that is very anti-nationalist as you can get. Basically, it's a tirade against nationalism. That nationalism is nationalism is a curse that is going to burn down the world, kind of thing. Which is, again, being written in 1920s,
Right.
before fascism and ultranationalism actually nearly burn down the world. It's kind of cool and prophetic. So, which sort of probably looking at, we have gone past an hour, and hardcore partisan or fanatical sectarian ethno-nationalism is burning down many parts of the world, including in Ray's country. So people like Ray are probably he was probably last of that archetype in Calcutta, which is not Calcutta anymore. It's now Kolkata.
Right. Run for the first time in its history by a BJP government.
Run for the first time in its history by a BJP government. But people who in that government probably ideologically are not all that different from many other people who have been in many other government in its history. So, but we're not going to do politics in this show. So that's for another show in another time.
Absolutely. But since you devoted the last few minutes to nationalism, let's make the point that it was nationalism that helped to get the British out of India, which was one of the overarching aims of Tagore's life near the end. And he was the person who gave the title Mahatma to Gandhi.
That is true too. Complex issues. So we end today talking about one of the great auteurs of Bangla literature and Bangla movies, and we'll come back in a. So we never discussed how often did we want to do this? Maybe once a month, did we say? We'll figure this out, right?
We'll figure this out. We
Figure
will respond to the market demand.
And our supply.
And our
supply. Okay.
Somewhere the curves will intersect.
Yes. All right. Okay. Fantastic. Dear viewers, do let us know and hope to talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.